All right, second part of week 7. You're going to keep working with equivalent ratios, equivalent tables, and you're going to have to complete some numbers. So it's similar to what we did earlier this week and last week, but now you need to do them in IXL. Get to 60 points, and I'll check them Thursday afternoon if your period's 1 through 5. I will check it Friday afternoon if you're period 6. All right, it is IXL time. We are going to do 3 sections in IXL level G. You'll do Q4, Q5, and Q6. You only have to get to 60 points for full credit. Okay? So these are problems just like we've been doing last week and earlier this week. They just might look slightly different. So it says write the number that makes the ratio equivalent to 1 to 5. Then it gives you 7 to blank. So we always want to make sure if we're looking at the first number, we're looking at the first number. And if we're looking at the second number, we're looking at the second number. This problem I can look at and just figure it out mathematically. If it helps, I could also put this into a table. So you see 1 to 5, and then it asks 7 to blank. So we just figure out, how do I go from 1 to 7? Times 7. Absolutely. Which means down here I just do times 7. And 5 times 7 gives us 35. So that's the answer. In that box I just write 35 and I hit submit. Okay? You don't have to make the table. It's just one way of organizing it that I found most of you find helpful and supportive. So then it says find the number that makes the ratio equivalent to 7 to 5. Again, it's just using some bigger numbers, but we do the same thing. If we look at the first number, we look at the first number. So 7 times 10 gets us 70, which means 5 times 10 gets us 50. And that's it. We enter 50, and we submit it. So that's what you're going to do for Q4. They might mix them up where they give you a blank in this place and write the 50 there, so you have to find the first number. But you do the same thing. You just make sure to look at the corresponding numbers. Okay? So that's Q4. Q5 says complete the ratio table. We have a couple of options for completing this ratio table. The first, that often is the most straightforward, if it is straightforward, we'll see in our next example that it's not always, is to just find our constant of proportionality. Okay. So 1 times 6 is 6. And 2 times 6 is 12. And 3 times 6 and 4 times 6 and 5 times 6 gives us 30. So that is our constant of proportionality. I know that nobody is really asking for this, but if you were to write this as an equation, it would just be y equals 6x. Our constant of proportionality is just the number that goes right there. Okay, so that can be really easy and straightforward. As you go further into these problems, they're going to get a little bit trickier, and they're going to have multiple boxes to fill in. So we started and we just had to fill in one box. As we get into higher scoring problems, we have to fill in both boxes. Wow, that arrow is ugly. We have to fill in both boxes. And I look here, and it is not as easy. So this is 7 times what is 4? I don't know that. We went over fact families earlier this year, where we can rearrange this into a division problem. Instead of 7 times blank is 4, we can write that as 4 divided by 7 is that number. And I talked a lot about how we can write division problems. 4 divided by 7, we could just write as 4/7. That means this is our constant of proportionality. That is ugly. So I could do this. 7 times 4/7 gives me 4. And I could plug that in for these. And, you know, you could open a calculator and do that. And that works. I want to point out, though, you can also move a different way in this table. So I'm going to leave the top 4/7, but I'm going to erase the rest of those. Because we can also multiply using scale factors. 7 times what is 21? How many 7s do you need to make 21? 3. So if I multiply on the left side by 3, I multiply on the right side by 3. So 4 times 3 gives me 12. And then I do the same thing, but I have to figure out the other number. 7 times what is 28? Oh, times 4. So 7 times 4 is 28. I didn't mean to write 7 times 4. I meant to write, if that's what it is on the left side, then on the right side, 4 times 4 is 16. So I get both of those entered, and I hit submit. Okay. So as it progresses, they get a little bit harder, and they start mixing other things up. There's one more of these ratio tables I want to do, because now it's still got 2 empty boxes that you have to fill in, but they're on different sides of the table. That's fine. We can figure it out. You can use a constant of proportionality, or you could use a scale factor and move up and down. Oh my gosh, I'm having difficulty with this screen. Okay, so 1 times what is 2? Well, that's 2. So 50 times 2 is 100. Great. And then I look and I try to figure out how many 50s do I need to make 150. 50 times what is 150? 3. So 1 times 3 is 3. I get those filled in and submit it. Okay. So these are the 3 kinds of problems you'll see as you progress through the ratio tables, Q5. They do get harder, but you are sometimes able to see some patterns. You're able to see some growth. I just want to be careful and check those mathematically as well. Okay. And then the last section of IXL, Q6, is about unit rates. And this is, unit rates are when we find the 1. So it's going to give you problems like find the unit rate. 12 stamps on 2 sheets is blank stamps per sheet. So I've got 12 stamps on 2 sheets, blank stamps per sheet. Again, I can always go back to tables. If I were to put stamps, oh my gosh, on sheets, I have to be very careful how I say that word. So 12 stamps on 2 sheets is how many stamps on 1? Per sheet means 1 sheet, right? And that's what we saw here, our unit rate. So how do I go from 2 to 1? I can divide by 2. I could also multiply by 1/2. So over here, I divide by 2, and I get 6. So there's 6 stamps per sheet. One more example, I screenshotted for you. Same thing, 28 liters in 2 minutes. How many liters in per minute? How many minutes does it mean? When it says per minute, it means 1. How do you go from 2 to 1? We just did that. Divide by 2, or we multiply by 1/2. How much is half of 28? You bet. 14. So I submit it. Alright, so these are the kind of problems you're going to see in Q6. You've got Q6, Q5, and Q4. How many points do you have to go to? That's right, 60 points. You don't have to go all the way to 80. Alright, let me know if you need help or if you have any questions. I am happy.